Good day, good morning, wherever you're zooming in from, everyone. Welcome to yet another Nova Scribes event. My name is Matteo Becchi, and it's so great to see your faces. We still have a few people rolling in, so don't mind the extra boxes that are popping up while we get through some introductory housekeeping type of messaging. So first and foremost, welcome to Optimizing Your Strengths and Flow with the amazing Jill and Heather this evening. Wave, everybody, if you can make it tell a scene there. Thank you, Jill and Heather. You are in yet another Nova Scribes meetup. I'd like to see, in a show of hands, who's here for the first time as a Nova Scribes attendee. Lauren, you're lying. Thank you for the playing, though. I see you. Ludi, I see you. Ahmed. Fantastic. Well, welcome to those of you that are here for the first time, and welcome back, all of you that are returning. So about 60 seconds worth of what Nova Scribes is about. It is a free meetup to join, and everyone and anyone is welcome. We're focusing in these meetups on basically anything visual that we can leverage to help move people in positive direction of change. At least that's my spin on it. So we're all volunteers in this meetup. Brian is a fellow organizer. Say hello, Brian. There you go. Lauren is a former organizer. If I'm missing others, just, text me and yell at me. It's all good. Yeah, so what are we here to do? We're here to just share and learn and introduce all sorts of new and fun ways that we can use visuals together. It's quite an expansive community. We were geographically focused in the DC area and Northern Virginia area, hence the name, which we have yet to retitle. But hey, pandemic came along and all of a sudden we are global. You should know that the proceeds from these paid events go to the presenters and also to things like scholarships, such as for IFEP type of events, those kinds of things. So we're all about giving back to the community. And there's also a WhatsApp channel for visual practitioners that we are happy to share a link to if you're interested. It's quite a thriving community of practitioners in the visual space. I think I've reached my 60-second limit, probably gone over it. Anything to add from either Brian or Lauren or any of our frequent flyers that I may have missed?
Yeah, I just got a quick one. So on December 10th, there's another meetup event that's happening. We're calling it Finding the Warmth in the Dumpster Fire, which is reflecting on 2020 and then doing a little bit of reframing for 2021. And to that point, what we're asking is, rather than submitting a payment directly through Meetup, is that you actually donate to cityarts.org. Which is all about bringing arts into the inner cities to help inner city kids, and there's a link to that on that meetup. Just that. Thanks, Matteo.
So good. That was key. And yes, we will share the link in chat momentarily. Thank you, Lauren. With that, that is all of our basic setup. I'm going to pass the microphone over to Jill to start over. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you, Matteo. And I'm delighted to see everyone here this evening. So many familiar faces. So great to be back. And so this evening, we'll be talking about, as in my portion of our time together, Heather and I working together, is about strengths. And so I'm hoping that you had a chance, don't go there now, but that you had a chance to do some work on the Miro board with the results of the strengths test that you took. And if you didn't, that's okay. You can still take it. I'll leave the board up. I'll create some other boards where we can put drawings that you do tonight and that kind of thing. And I will show you the board and we'll talk about it anyway. So you'll get oriented to it. So that's just the good news around the pre-work. Some folks got to it, some didn't. We understand life happens. So with that being said, I'm going to dive right into just a little bit of background and how I came to this work. So some of you may know, because I've done an introduction before, I'm formerly a New York City public school teacher, but even before that, I went to Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts, and studied psychology. And so I needed one more credit to graduate early. And so I did an independent study with a professor, and I read Martin Seligman's book, Unlearned Helplessness. So this was back in 1978 is when I was reading it, 77, 78. And it was, how do people respond to natural disasters? Some people bounce back and some people take longer. And that's where I started with Martin. And I'm sitting here with my collection of Martin's books. I think that one's in a box someplace. But then I went on to Learned Optimism, super book, really enlightening. And then I ended up taking his Authentic Happiness Coaching Program at a University of Pennsylvania. So Martin Seligman is a former president of the American Psychological Association. And so I followed his work. He's now doing other kinds of things. He's got so much to offer, and I really loved the strengths work that he was doing, and that's why I went into the coaching program. And so that tells you a bit about my background in this. I guess the teacher piece, or the special ed piece, meaning working with children with special education needs, is that my training at Clark and also at Bank Street College of Education and Teachers College for my doctorate was always on working with people's strengths, right? So working with children's strengths and not hammering away at their weaknesses, because how much fun is that for any of us? It's no good. It's not the way to go. It doesn't get the best results. And there's all kinds of data to prove that, which we're not going to get into here. And you're probably thanking me for that. We are going to start though with a bit of check-in. So I'm hoping that you have markers and paper at the ready. And I'm going to ask you to create, in pictures and or words, a positive introduction for yourself. Please make a drawing of yourself at your best. And so that's the phrase behind me, draw yourself at your best. And you may know your strengths because you took the strengths test, and you might say, oh yeah, I can remember that strength, and this is me at my best, and this is how it shows up. Or you might not have taken it and you could say, well, I know this about myself, or somebody told me I'm really good at that, and you'll make a drawing around that. So I'm going to set the timer for about 3.5 minutes. All right, little leeway there if you need it, but we're going to go with 3.5 minutes to draw a picture of you doing your best work as a positive introduction of yourself to the group. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But aside from that, draw away. The timer's on. So take about another 20 seconds to come to a point where you are comfortable finishing up. I'm watching Karen's face right now. She's going, oh no. And there is our happy little timer. And so what I'd like to do is hear from you, or maybe see in the chat how you felt about doing this. So feel welcome to come off of mute and to say what it felt like to think about yourself doing your best work and then literally creating it through drawing or drawing in words. What was that like in terms of a check-in? Thoughts or comments? Oops, I can see. All right, so Lauren, we're seeing yours. You're going in nice and close there. Terrific. And so just a couple of words, maybe in the chat, because I will keep that open a bit so I can look also. But what did that feel like? Fun and challenging. Thanks, Nancy. Great, Ahmed. Super. Up, there we go. Thanks, Heather. Super. Brian, nice. Nice, Deb. Terrific. Oxygenation. Super. Ludi, oh, sweet. Sarah, nice. Dr. Monique Liston, nice. Monique. Awesome. Okay, Sandy, thank you for sharing. Joseph, I just saw yours. Yep. I'm trying to look at 50 places at once here. Yeah, terrific. So we'll have, I'll create a board. So you can also pop your drawings up there, your pictures very easily if you want to. I'm not going to do this in this moment though. I'd love to hear any, if you desire to come off of mute, any other thoughts that you had about this, just in terms of a check-in, like how it's different than some of the other check-ins maybe that you've experienced with a focus on the positive. Any thoughts or comments?
It took me a while to visualize it, like what is the image that I want to represent. And then when I put my pen on the paper, I was like, "Ooh, it's been a while since I've drawn a thing."
And so Monique, may I ask you a question? So I'm wondering, did you, because there's no one way to do this, I'm asking more about your process at this point. Did you think of an experience and then think about a strength, or did you think about one of your strengths and then it led you to an experience?
I really think I thought about the feeling good, like where do
Okay.
I feel good? And then you mentioned the strengths, and I was like, yes, that connected to some of the strengths that I talked about. So I thought about the feeling first and then thought about the strengths.
Thanks, Monique. Nice.
I had a moment of panic, and then as you were talking, and then as you were talking, it said, and then think about the work you did and what it showed. And so it's okay. So then I actually kind of got literal for a second. Okay, let me visualize those items, because so that's what I did, and it helped me.
Okay, terrific. Excellent. Any other thoughts or any questions? And once again, it can also be, this was really hard. I wasn't prepared for it. It's been a long day. All answers are acceptable in this space. All right, well, good to know. Oh, I thought that was a hand waving, but I think it's a cat's tail in Joseph's screen. Just saying, a little distracted there for a sec. All right, so let's talk about strengths and just do a quick background piece to set the stage for further conversations. And I'm wondering who here is familiar a bit with maybe Dr. Seligman's work or positive psychology and wants to say just a couple sentences about it. Right, it's a two-part question. Are you familiar? The answer could be yes. And the second part is, do you want to say anything? And the answer might be no. All right, well, Lauren, was that a thumbs up? Did I see a thumbs up? You'd like to say something?
Sure.
Go for it.
All about positive psychology. The program that I did at George Mason, their organization development program, the director, Tojo Thatchencarry's book is on appreciative intelligence. And so appreciative inquiry is certainly a backbone of that program. But in terms of how I describe, if I could, can I go for appreciative inquiry? Because that's my related topic of.
It's certainly related, and they're definitely friends. What I'll probably try and do is keep us on the strengths this time around.
Okay.
If that's okay, but they're absolutely related. And when you read about one, you start reading about the other. Thanks for making that connection.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but definitely the ability to see opportunity and challenge space is probably my bumper sticker.
Okay, got it. Any other thoughts or comments from folks? All right, I'm going to dive in for just a bit then. So positive psychology is really a focus on strengths rather than weaknesses, as I was referencing before with the work that I did with students. And happiness can actually be cultivated by identifying and using the strengths and traits that we already have. So we can do it in our personal lives, we can do it in our work, and by calling on our strengths, we can really buffer against misfortune that we might be experiencing in our lives and the experience of negative emotions. So this really has that buffering effect. So it's definitely a good thing to be thinking about and working on. So positive psychology is about happiness and well-being. It's really a shift away from what I started studying at college back in the 70s, which was pathology, victimization, and mental illness. And it's not to say that all of those things are not important. Don't get me wrong. They absolutely are. There's just another side to this coin where we can start looking at what are positive emotions, what are virtues that everyone possesses, and what are strengths. And so the work, and here I'm going to hold up this like 5-pound book of character strengths and virtues. All right. So this is like the tome in the field and very old at this point, but a lot of research was done around the world as to what are common virtues found across cultures. And so what we'll find out when we take a look at the Miro board is that there are 6 key virtues, and then there are various character strengths that line up with each of those virtues. And so you learn about that if you read the Authentic Happiness book or any number of articles by Marty. So what we want to do with positive psychology is really identify the best in ourselves so that we can improve the world around us. We can achieve new and sustainable levels of authentic contentment, gratification, and meaning. And boy, if this isn't the time to be focusing in that direction, right? So we can focus on 3 different aspects of our lives. So this is what's often talked about with strengths and happiness, the pleasant life, and that's a life that successfully pursues the positive emotions about the past, the present, and the future. So that's our pleasant life. The good life is using our strengths to obtain abundant gratification in the main areas of our lives. And the meaningful life is about using your significant strengths. Those are your top 5, if you did the inventory, using your significant strengths and virtues in service of something that's bigger than you are. So that's really about leaving a legacy. All right. And so we're going to go to that Miro board now, and this is going to become more clear. That was just laying the foundation for you. Let's take a peek. And here we are. So hopefully you are also seeing all of this right now. We've got a few guest editors, a guest editor and a muralist, and I'm going to go a little big right here on the chart that I created. So what we see down at the bottom, and I color coding because who doesn't love color coding, right? Is you see those 6 virtues across the bottom and the character strengths that are associated with each of them. And what I had asked people to do, if they had the opportunity to take the test, is to fill out a sticky note. So you see mine across the bottom. Let's just hover there. And then I numbered my top 5 signature strengths. So mine, as we can see, are just as an example, creativity is my first, love of learning is my second. I zoom all the way down to hope for my third. And then my 4th is curiosity, and my 5th is perspective. And so that was just, and I hadn't looked at it this way in a long time. I usually ask other people to do this work, and I was like, oh my gosh, 4 of my signature strengths are in the wisdom category. And that's kind of interesting, not a bad thing, just an interesting thing, right? And so I'd love for you to take a look at the board right now. And of course, I did drop, and someone else may have done it again for anyone else that came in later, the link to the Miro board if you want to get to it on your own computer so that you can see it bigger and better, because I'm still trying to give us the big picture. But look at all these different strengths, all 24 of those character strengths, and look at the diversity that we have here. So what are your thoughts and comments as you look at all of this, whether you're talking about yourself, which is totally cool because we're here to talk about ourselves, and we're also here to look at the big picture.
Well, this is just pretty obvious. There's a ton of wisdom here, which is really cool. And then justice comes in second. I'm just looking at that. That's neat.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Joseph. What other thoughts do you have? Because I have to admit, I'm not looking in the chat right now because I'd rather be looking at you and at the board. And so maybe if something pops up or you really want to say something, by all means, come off of mute. What other thoughts or questions do you have as you look at this?
I was surprised that at my number 1, I thought it was going to be creativity, and it didn't come up at all. And humor came up, and I'm really not that funny.
And so when you read about humor, it wasn't just about being funny though, right?
Right.
So let's just go down to another part of the board, because we have, it's like the Jetsons up there with stuff. I date myself when I say that, but honestly, there's a lot going on that board. So let's look at humor. So what I did, just to get, we'll go out for a moment here. I took each of the 6 virtue areas and gave a very brief, based on what's on the website, description of what each of those were. So humor is about approaching life playfully and finding humor in difficult times. So Christine, how does that feel to you in terms of that playful piece?
I mean, it is true. I try to make things fun and not take things too seriously. It's maybe a defense mechanism though. But
not going there, Christine, sorry.
Not today. But I don't know. I was surprised.
You know, it is interesting. You can take these tests more than once. So I was actually on the site today because I love surveys and inventories, and I took the gratitude inventory again, which was super fun. Got the same score, not so enlightening. But you might, I've taken this more than once. And so I've had a little shift from time to time. So I think that's kind of interesting. Yes, Joseph is giving us the wave motion there.
So it depends on your mood that day.
Well, hopefully it's not dependent on your mood, because you have some modal or some general behaviors or the way that you are in the world, sort of your inner core consistency, but circumstances change. And I think we find that even more with personality or communication styles inventories than the character strengths. So that's an interesting thought. Thank you, Christine. I'm wondering who else might care to share a thought or a question. And it's okay if there's no one else, because I certainly have other things to say. I just don't want to step on anyone. All right, so I'm gonna do something now. I'm gonna show you a quick thing that I create. Well, 2 quick resources up here, and you can download, I believe, with editing rights, you can download off this board. So if you wanted to scoop up the article that I posted there, terrific. Oh, look at that. And I have a typo, but I can't fix it while I'm here. So it should say strengths gone awry instead of a strengths gone awry. And that's a piece, while I was taking the course with Marty, I was doing some work for FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology, with students with learning disabilities. And that was my first foray into teaching people around the strengths. So I literally made and so that's the article that you're seeing right in front of you right there. I literally made this chart to the left on flip chart paper that was literally 12 feet high and probably 16 feet wide, so that I could list all of the strengths and all of the students' names, and they could do the same exercise themselves when we were together at a retreat. And so that was my creativity strength gone awry, right? Like, so much fun, so many ideas, having trouble sticking to the deadline and getting out the door on time, right? So the larger point I'm making here is that there's a light side and a shadow side to your strengths. And so I made this mind map this afternoon, just super simple, just popped a picture of myself, and I took my 5 strengths of creativity, love of learning, hope, curiosity, and perspective. And in green, there's a green branch for each one, a child branch, that says something good or a good experience related to my strength. And there's, shall we say, a dark side or a challenge that I faced because of my strength. And so I'd like to put that question out there to you and see that I have been clear in talking a little bit about what could be a challenge. Oh, look at that. I'm going to have to go back and put that circle back and lock it down. No worries. But I'd like to talk with you. What are your thoughts about understanding the dark side of a strength? Because I know when I first heard it in Marty's course, I was like, what do you mean there's a dark side to having a strength? How could that be? And then I did the assignment and I was like, oh, yes, I see that. So who's got some thoughts or questions about that?
I do. I'm like Hermione Granger over here.
It's all good, Hermione. Go ahead, go for it.
Pick me. I love this concept. There's a similar one in the book, Leading from the Inside Out. Or they talk about your values have a shadow side connected by limiting belief. So just a quick example of that, maybe something that you value is caring for other people. But if you feel like you are losing threads or you don't have enough control, that caring could come off like control to others. So, or similarly, if you value or strength of yours is inclusion or connection, but you feel like nobody else cares about that but me, then you could seemingly create a feeling of isolation. So this idea that there are these 2 sides of every value or strength blows my mind completely, and I love thinking about that.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about that for a minute, because this is a little different in the sense that it's not about limiting beliefs. It's about literally that you can do your strength so much that you overuse it and it gets in your way. So with the FIT project that I did for the students, I had to drive out to Long Island where the retreat was. I was working on the chart up until the second I got in the car, because I get an idea in my head and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing that, right? And so the fact that I'm creative is good until it gets me in trouble with compressing my timeline and maybe not being able to get it done. right? So I'm wondering if anyone else has another example. You recognize something in yourself as a strength because you've taken the survey, people have told you, you have that intuition about yourself, and you see how it's gotten you in trouble once or twice, and you're careful about it. Who's got a thought about
Yeah.
that?
Nancy, come on in.
I do.
Great,
Yeah.
do it, Nancy.
So one of my strengths is prudence. I'm a very cautious, deliberate, careful decision maker. I think through all possible outcomes before doing something. But that can sometimes lead to inaction and sometimes lead to not enough risk taking so that I miss opportunities to do things that might be more creative.
Yeah, great. That's a great example, Nancy. Thank you.
Mhm.
Would anyone else care to share an example?
My love of learning. Oh, there's Karen. Come on in, Karen.
I was going to say judgment, which I think is weighing different objectives. That is the trap of analysis paralysis, and I can easily live there.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. So true. Mateo, why don't you finish us up on this particular piece with your love of learning?
Oh, sure. Thanks. I love it so much, the learning thing, that I sometimes lose track of life and time, and the fact that what I'm pursuing is actually in service of something, like for a contract or a gig or for a client, and I can lose sight of that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Super examples. All right. And so we're going to take some of this information that we've just been talking about, and I have a challenge exercise for you. And it is, so make a note or two about this. Reflect for a moment, and I mean that, I don't mean that literally. You have literally 3 minutes to reflect. So reflect, name, and draw a challenge that you're currently facing. All right, it could be professional, it could be personal. You are going to be in a pair with someone else, so it is something that you will be sharing with someone, so be sure that you're comfortable with that. But reflect on a challenge that you're having, recognize what it is, draw or write a bit about it, completely your choice, and then think about the strengths that you will use to meet your challenge. So I'm going to set the timer for 3.5 minutes. And once again, you don't need to be done with your drawing because you'll be in pairs and talking with each other, so you can finish in that way. But so 3.5 minutes to draw right now. And at the end of 3.5 minutes, when my timer goes off, you'll be put into pairs in breakout rooms and have 6 minutes, 3 minutes per person to share your stories. And I will look at the chat now in case anybody has a question they would like to ask there. And so that's our timer that just went off. And so Mateo is going to work the miracle of putting folks into breakout pairs for 6 minutes, so 3 minutes per person.
All right, I'm gonna hit the magic beam me up Scotty button. And we're back.
Fantastic. And so I'd like to check in. I was lucky enough to engage with a partner also. And so I know about my experience, but I'm wondering about some of yours. So would you please share some of your thoughts about the entire experience? What was it like to think of a challenge, to remember your strengths, or to think about them, to create some kind of drawing and story, and then share that with a partner, and then ultimately hear their story too? Who would care to add something to the chat or come off of mute and share ideas? Oops, so sorry. Errant timer. Yeah, Deb, please start us off.
Yeah, so Jennifer and I were partnered up, and interestingly enough, we both had the exact same challenge. So that was quite funny. Both of us love taking different courses and reading different books. It's that lifelong learning passion. But then it's that challenge of just seeing the growing list and getting a bit overwhelmed. We actually didn't show our drawings. I was just eagerly pulling all of Jennifer's really creative ideas. But the one thing that we talked about too was that it was that dark side of the strength, where that the strength of wanting to learn, to being open and excited by new ideas without having more of a plan or a thought around it. It becomes too much, which is what we're facing. But she had some really awesome ideas. So if anybody's looking for anything.
Well, we hope to see everyone's drawings up on the Moreau board. Thank you. Terrific, Deb. Thank you for starting us off. And who else would care to add a thought or a question or a comment? Yes, Sarah.
Hi. So I met with Mary Jo, and we ended up spending all the time talking about my challenge. So I apologize, Mary Jo. But it was so helpful just to share my challenge out loud and then have it kind of reflected back to me, but through like a completely different lens. Because I will admit that I was definitely looking at it through sort of a weakness kind of lens, like, oh man, this is going to be super hard and I'm not capable or I'm not ready, what all these things that are like are limiting. And specifically around judgment and critical thinking. But the third word in that particular strength is open-mindedness, which I think is so interesting. It's almost like contradictory, but Mary Jo really zoomed in on that and pointed out how that's actually going to be super useful for this particular challenge. So thank you for that.
Terrific. I'm so glad. Anyone else care to share before we move on to another activity? All right, well, I will check the chat later as you are doing some more work. So this time, I'm going to ask all of you to think about what you long for in your life right now. What do you desire? And once again, that may be personal, it may be professional, it may be some combination thereof. There are no boundaries. What I'm going to try and do, well, all right, I'm facing a tough decision here. I'm counting on you. I know Mateo's going, what do we do? What do we do? So what I'd like to do is give you a couple minutes to think about that and then put you into pairs, and it's still going to be like 6 minutes and it's going to be a short debrief. Does that feel better? Or would you rather have more time to think, more time to draw? Don't make me into King Solomon, please. So thumbs up for we'd like to do pairs afterwards. All right, I'm seeing a few, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so about half the, you're making me into King Solomon. I won't do it. All right, so we'll do pairs. And so the question is, what do you long for or desire in your life right now? Please draw a picture or do a little journaling about it and how you will use one or more of your strengths to work toward your dream. So once again, the drawing doesn't have to end at the end of this session. Of course, you have to listen to Heather and then you can draw after that. But take 3 minutes now to start your drawing. And then we will do 6 minutes again for pairs, come back, close it up really quick and move on to Heather. So what are you longing for? What is your dream? Yes. And so Andrea, it is, what are you longing for in your life right now? What are you dreaming about? And how will you use one or more of your strengths to start you on the path to achieving it? And there's our timer. She's very quiet, but she's speaking. And so it is time to be whisked into new pairs for 6 minutes total. Thank you, Mateo.
You bet. Have fun. I think I did it right, leaving you out this time, Jill. There we go.
Well done.
Right.
Oh, I did just see a stuffed rabbit. That is too cute. Wherever that came from, that was adorable.
Welcome back, folks. I think we have
nice, Joseph. Terrific. All right. And we are back. And so once again, you know the question, it's going to be, what was it like to think about what you're longing for, the strengths that you have to draw and perhaps write a bit about that, share with a partner, aside from being too brief, probably. What else was it? And once again, you're welcome to put it in the chat or come off of mute. We have 2 minutes remaining, and I do want to do a quick checkout also. I have now browbeat you all into silence. I certainly hope not. I'm glad you enjoyed the connection. Thanks, Lauren.
Yeah.
For saying that.
Nancy.
I think it was funny to see what different things we had in common. Even with different goals, we'd have common strengths. Or I think my favorite was that the first thing that Heather and I thought of when you said, what are you longing for, was alone time. So, I'm not sure what strength will get me that, but I'll find it eventually.
I'm sure you will. Creativity will certainly get you there. Creativity will get you everywhere. You may get stuck there, but it'll get you there. Nice. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Andrea. Yes, Nancy.
So I wanted to thank Mateo for putting me in the best groups both times. So I had just amazing partners both times. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. And it was also just remarkable how Jennifer and I were paired the second time, and we had completely different challenges, but they had so much in common in terms of what we would need to do to address them. So I found that just really remarkable.
Wow, how cool. Thanks for
That
sharing.
was very cool.
Elizabeth, yes, we will. You have the moment.
Hi, thank you for doing this and putting this together. I had a nice conversation with Sarah DeWitt. And the one thing that I'm taking away from that so much is we were talking about energy, and it was kind of more of just a quick one sentence thing. But during just after that, I was like, it takes a lot of energy. And especially during times like these, I didn't realize how much energy I've actually expelled. I was mentioning we have to clean everything under the sun because of COVID or whatever. And it just takes so much more energy. But I've actually been able to do some self-care enough to keep my energy high. And so the strength would be resourceful. And I actually didn't see that as so much of a strength, that I am still pretty highly motivated, and I'm still very passionate about my Zentangle business. So anyway, thank you, Sarah, and thank you to the host.
We have to talk, Elizabeth, but that's another time. Zentangle goodies.
Okay, cool.
What I'd like to do at the top of the hour, just one more minute, because Heather said she'd give me an extra minute, which is so kind. And that is, so how do y'all feel now that you've devoted the past 50 minutes focusing on your strengths? What are you walking away feeling? And so once again, you're welcome to come off of mute or drop it in the chat.
This is Karen, and I was really excited about this. Thank you so much. I've really struggled a lot with a lot of the work I'm doing, like not being fun for me, and I guess something coming up that I'm really sort of dreading if it goes through. And I realized I need to go back to these strengths. I need to use them as criteria to evaluate things I'm taking on. And then when I take something on, I need to have a conscious, deliberate process to say, how can I utilize these strengths in a positive way in the project? And I think this can make a really big difference. So thank you.
Beautiful, Karen. Thank you. Very nice. Would anyone else care to finish up? I know there's things in the chat, and I will definitely take a peek at them later. I will create some boards up on Miro so you can share what you created in terms of your drawing, should you care to do so.
I have a thought. Let me actually, can you see? So I would say from having this conversation, the conversations, and even listening to my partner and everyone else, I walk away feeling both inspired and affirmed in using the power of my strengths and the possibilities that can be created from that versus focusing on what could be a hindrance. And I think it's just a nice shift to say, you know, I can do this. It's already here. Versus looking at the problem or the things that get in the way. So I appreciate this. Thank you.
Certainly. Well, thank you, Hamika. And so it has been my complete pleasure to work with all of you. What a great time. And it is now my pleasure to hand over to Heather, because she and I have this relationship where we come together and we leverage each other's strengths, and it all comes together beautifully. At least that's how I'm feeling. Over to you, Heather.
Thank you, Jill. I'm really excited to see what people are putting in the chat, and thank you for warming everybody up, Jill. It's like, all right, now you're all juiced up and ready to go, and now I'm going to experiment on you. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to share my screen quickly, and you might think, oh, great, she's got slides. Oh, there's an agenda. Oh, this is so structured. But I thought I was here to talk. We were here to talk about flow, and the thing is that flow is actually really, really structured until you get into it. And so I'm going to talk about that structure. We're going to create a framework for you to work in, and then I'm going to take you through a couple of exercises. So hopefully you can experience flow. And if you don't experience it, at least you'll have the framework. So when you are in the right time and space, you'll be able to leverage that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit. Some of these are really short. We're going to spend a little bit more time in the actual hands-on work, but I'm going to talk about what is flow according to Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. How do we get into the flow state? At least the theory of getting into the flow state. I'm not making any guarantees, but if you stick with me and give me your undivided attention, then chances are you'll get there, or at least start to feel it if you haven't already done so already. Then I'm going to take you through a lettering exercise where we're going to focus on form. It may be something you've already learned from me. I know I'm looking through the participants, and it's like, I know most of you and some of you are my students, so chances are you know this lettering style, but I'm going to have you look at it in a different way, hopefully. Then I'm going to invite you to take a guided visualization with me. And then we're going to do another section of lettering. And the reason why I choose lettering is because it literally puts you in the moment. If you're not just leaning on your handwriting to go fast, which I know sometimes we do as visual practitioners, but I really want you to focus on the letters that you're making and then notice what's coming up for you. And then I'm going to teach you how to stop the flow state, so you don't leave your house, get in a car and run off the road, that kind of thing. Like, how do you get out of that flow state? And then I'll just talk a little bit about why do we want to be in the flow state and see if any of you have experience or know some of the benefits of being in the flow state. So what is the flow state? And when I talk about the flow state, I'm talking about flow state of mind, the way Mihai Csikszentmihalyi defines it. And that is the term, he defines the term as highly focused mental state conducive to productivity. And you'd think, really? Because I thought I'd be like just kind of chill and hanging out, but it's extremely active. And I don't have the street creds that Jill has, but I have the experience and I want to share that with you. And that is this. In 2017, when I left Washington, D.C., I took a gap year and drove across the country with my husband in a 1947 teardrop trailer. And we went to 3 artist residencies. And in that time, in the very first artist residency, because I'd been working in DC and I had not made any art, any fine art in any way for over 3 years, I wanted to get back into it. And the first couple of days, I had a really hard time making that shift. But then I remembered that I'd read a book by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and I thought, what if I used some of those techniques to get into the flow state and not have to deal with the challenge and the struggle of making art? I would just get right into it. And so at that time, I actually wrote this particular drawing that you see here on one of the very first days that I got into my artist residency. And so these are the 8 elements of flow, and you're welcome to draw it out if you want, but I'll read these out for you. So the first most important thing is to have clarity of your goal. Know what it is that you want to accomplish. And then as you get into the flow state, what will happen is you will get immediate feedback. Now, as visual practitioners, or even if you're not a professional visual practitioner, you just did it with Jill. You put marker or pen to paper, and immediately, what does it feel like when you first put your first mark down? It gives you information back. So once you're in the flow state, you definitely get that immediate feedback. Then there's this skill and challenge balance. Now, you know some of your strengths by the exercises that you just did with Jill. And what will happen is when you realize, are my skills balancing my challenge, then that's what's going to help you get into that flow state. And I'll talk more about that in just a moment. Your concentration and focus will be incredibly sharp. You'll know you're in flow because you're not thinking about anything else. You are operating in the present, which means you don't have any regrets about the past and you have no worries about the future. And what happens is that because you're in control of your experience, you're going to have a total loss of self-consciousness. Now you're thinking, really? Are you sure? I don't know. The voices in my head are pretty loud. But if you have that skill and challenge balance, there's no self-talk happening. You're just doing the work. And a lot of times you'll find that time passes so quickly that you don't even realize it. Things happen where you realize, oh my gosh, I'm hungry. It's been 3 hours. I've been doing this type of thing. So these are the 8 elements of flow. And now I'd like to talk to you about that challenge and skill level. So how do we get there? And it's really important that you find that balance. Now, it's not that you're going to be consciously looking for it, but when you get there, you'll know. And so you'll see on the left side, the challenge level goes from low to high. On the bottom side, from left to right, low to high on the skill level. So just for a moment, putting your feet, what was the last element? Yes. So the last element, sorry about that, is sense of time is transformed, right? So the skill and challenge level, what I'd like to do is walk you through each of these. If you want, you're welcome to close your eyes, but with your feet on the ground. And a good practice is to put your hands out in front of you, maybe set them on the desk in front of you, and just notice the back of your hands. Notice the hair, notice the skin. Is it dry? Is it, are you well hydrated? Do you have jewelry on? Where does your sleeve meet the back of your hand? Just really notice the back of your hand. And as I say this, I want you to notice what it feels like inside when I describe these different skill and challenge level scenarios. So say you have a low challenge, like, I don't know, washing dishes or something like that. But what if it's the first time you've ever done it and you're not very good at it? You're not going to be excited about it. You really don't want to do it. And if you are doing it and your skill level, you have a pretty good skill level on washing dishes, so you're not really challenged, you're going to be bored. It's not going to be very good. But if you find that you really are good at making sure the dishes have plenty of soap and you like the feeling of the water going down the back of your hand, and for some of you, you really, are you a tines up or tines down person in the dishwasher? Like, are you that organized? You might find it quite relaxing or rewarding in some way to be able to do something that has such a low skill level. So let's go up the other side, and maybe you have a low skill level. And maybe it might be that you just got hired to do something. Maybe you oversold yourself, or someone requested you to do a job and you needed to take it. And you realize, oh my gosh, this is a bit of a challenge. Can I pull it off? What does it feel like to worry about, do I have all the skills I need to be able to do this? And then what happens when you get yourself in a situation where you're like, it's obvious I am not qualified for this and I have to get it done and I have a deadline and people are watching? You'll start to feel that anxiety. Now let's dial into the flow state. If you have if you have a pretty good challenge level, it's like in the middle, but your skill level is really high, you're going to feel like, I got this, right? I feel like I'm in control. I know exactly what I'm doing. Challenge isn't that big, and I've done this a gazillion times before. Now, I'm not totally bored because I'm really good at this, and I'm challenged just enough to feel like I'm in total control. But what happens if your challenge level is high and your skill level isn't quite matched? You're not too anxious about it. You're kind of excited about it. You can't wait to get started. You feel aroused. You're like, this is it. It's going to push me. Maybe I know this is my learning edge and I feel pretty good about it and I'm going to learn from it. That flow state, when you get ready to go into flow state, that's where that challenge and skill level meet. This is where everything just sort of washes away. Maybe you don't hear what's going on around you, or you hear it and it doesn't affect you. You are in a place where you know what you're doing. A lot of those who have experience with graphic recording can experience the flow state while graphic recording. You feel a little anxious because you want to make sure you can capture it all. But at the same time, you're like, I know where all my markers are. I know what I'm doing. I'm drawing really well. I have a sense of control over my space. And you might even bounce back between arousal and control to get to that flow state. It's almost like finding your equilibrium. So any questions so far about the 8 elements or a description of how you get into flow state? Or what types of activities do you currently do that you can relate to being in the flow state? Have you experienced it before? And what's that like? Feel free to unmute or put it in the chat.
Heather, I was just going to say, because I just finished doing the course with you, certainly for me, when I'm doing something creative, I start off with all the self-doubt, but once I get into it, then I feel like I'm in that flow state, that I do lose that sense of time. And what I also find too, for me, is that I almost get consumed by it as well. So there's that dark side maybe to it too for me, where it's like I wake up at night and I'm dreaming and thinking about another visual. So yeah. I need to find the switch. looking forward to how you shut that off.
Well, I'm going to talk about, thank you, Deb, for sharing. I'm going to talk about how do you switch that off immediately, like it like takes you out of it. I'm going to pull you out of it. But I have to say that I would encourage you to explore a little bit more about that dream state, because I've been using dreams to help me solve problems. And if you can wrap your head around that, I've been having a project that I've been putting off because it's just, I can't see myself doing it yet. So I don't have that clarity of goal. So when I go to sleep at night, I think about it and I kind of tell my subconscious, I know you have the answer. I haven't thought of it consciously yet. And this morning I woke up with the answer and I jumped out of bed. And even though I couldn't finish the project because it's such a big project, I made some quick sketches and I already feel like my anxiety is a little bit lower, right? Because the challenge level isn't so high and I feel like I have a little bit more control. So I love that you said that. And I'd still encourage you to not always shut it off, but to kind of play with that. Well, I would just say play with dreams, but absolutely.
Well, that's interesting. I appreciate the tip on just asking my brain, just asking my subconscious to come back with the answer, because I don't give a direction. I just pass out and dream what I dream. So
it doesn't take much. Yeah, it doesn't take much. It could just like, don't get caught up in the ideation of it. Just trust, say, hey, subconscious, you're going to give me the answer. I'm going to go to sleep now.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. I purposely take naps just so that my subconscious will tell me what to do when I wake up.
I guess I definitely, the closest I do, sorry, and I'll stop talking here, everybody, but I do know that when I'm working and I get stuck and I can't figure out what my next step is, that I do need to just walk away and go do something else. And then the idea will pop into my head. I need to actually stop doing what I'm doing and go load my dishwasher or something, some other task altogether.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I love what I'm seeing in the chat. Music can definitely get people into the flow state. Music, knitting, anything that has a pattern, is repetitious. You can kind of drop into a place where you're not really noticing what's before or behind you, but that it's definitely something that's continual, right? I love what Mateo said about crafting a mural board from scratch. You've got a clear goal. You know what you're about to do, and here's some steps. And then what happens, Mateo, after you are a few minutes in? Is there something that's satisfying to you? Are you noticing, yeah, I'm getting into this? Can you say more about that?
Yeah, there's definitely, I think it ties to another book I read called The Progress Principle, where I'm seeing progress made and seeing this thing just arising through my effort over time. It's very what's the word? It's satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talks about how you can get happy, you can experience happiness by going into the flow state because you feel a sense of accomplishment, because you feel like you've been productive and you've done something. And talking about looking at what people are writing about coaching, facilitating sessions, delivering trainings, taking people through a mapping process, you are holding a space for someone else. And that might feel like, to some that don't have the skill level, that's a lot of responsibility. But for those who have done this and know this, and in some ways you almost know what they're going to say, or you know what the process is, so you can help them through that. It definitely, that's such a wonderful example of how you can get through the flow state through your work, and even if other people are involved. This is awesome. I love it. Okay, so thank you for sharing some of these. Now I want to focus on form. And so some of you have seen, some of you have experienced how to letter like an architect. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to turn on my iPivo camera so you can see my hands, hopefully. Let's see if this works. Yay. I always say that like it's not going to work, and I've been doing this for years, but sometimes it doesn't. So what I'd like you to do is just grab any monoline tool. So what's a monoline tool? It's a tool that has just one point at the end. That's going to be like a pencil, a pen, a round nib. It can be a marker, whatever, and grab your sketchbook or a piece of paper. And you are welcome to look at the exemplar that I have here that I'm going to be referring to, or you can watch me write. And what I'd like you to notice is, when I say notice the form, I want you to notice the lines you're making in relationship to what you're visualizing. So what do I mean by that? And again, some of you already know how to write like an architect, but I'm going to go over what the attributes are. And the attributes are really important to me because as a visual practitioner, we go really fast sometimes when we write. And I think it's important to remember these attributes so that we can visualize what these letters look like and we can go faster. It becomes part of our muscle memory. And so it's really, you get to the point where if I can remember the attributes, I can write the letters. So the attributes of Architect is that all of the letters, with the exception of the letter I, is based on a square. So it's a really wide letter. All of the stems are straight vertical stems. So like on the B, the D, the E, the F. And then all of the rounded letters have some type of oval in them. So the O is an oval, but you can even see the ovals in like the B and the D. You'll see them in there. And then all of the letters in some way go up and to the right. So if you have, say, the letter H and you have a crossbar, it goes up and to the right. It does that for a couple of reasons. It helps you to go faster because it lands your marker in position ready to write the next letter. But it also it helps with this rhythm. And you'll see this after we write a few letters. Now I am going to start out, actually, I'm not going to go in ABC order because I think that's too predictable. I'm actually going to teach you this lettering style in the order of family letters. And so we're going to build from the most simple letter to the most complex. All right. So let's just start with the letter I. Now it doesn't have to fit in the square, but it is a straight up and down stem. That's easy enough. When you write the letter H, the second stem could be slightly higher if you wish, and the crossbar goes up and to the right. The letter L is like the I, only its vertical or its horizontal bar goes up and to the right. Again, all these stems are very straight. You may want to start out going slowly, having very purposeful starts and stops. And then if we write the letter E, all of the horizontal lines are going to go up and to the right, and they're all going to be the same length. If you didn't get it right the first time, don't worry about it. You can write it again or just move on to the next letter. We're going to write the letter F, again, starting with that straight vertical stem. This time with the F, the crossbar in the middle is going to be slightly lower because here in the E, we're looking for this space to be the same, and the same with the F. And because we don't have that bottom horizontal line, these spaces need to be more equal to each other. Now, again, this is I'm focusing so much on form. However, we're not going to write this slowly when we go to graphic record or draw, but I do want you to focus on form here. So again, the letter T, a nice straight stem, and then a crossbar that goes up and to the right. All right, now let's go for a little bit angled letters. So the letter A, you're going to have an angle. It's like a diagonal. And the second stem, again, doesn't have to go all the way down. It can be a little bit higher like the H, and you're going to have that crossbar. That's an A, or the crossbar that goes up and to the right. The M, imagine there being a little set of steps, and you're going to have these diagonals, and this M is walking up a set of steps. The N is going to have straight stem, but then a diagonal. Again, it doesn't have to go all the way down. And then your second stem can go a little bit higher, like your H. And this is going to be a wide letter. All of these should be pretty wide. Your M and your W might be wider than the square. That's fine. The V can be a pretty straightforward V. If you want to make the right side longer, you can. And the W is two V's, but again, think about them walking up the steps. So you're going to go a little bit higher with each with each line. And for those of you who have taken maybe seen me give a demo, I usually go through these very quickly, but because we're focusing on form, I want to go a little bit slower. Now with the X, imagine that square, and you're not going to go all the way down on the right, but you are going to start from the bottom of that square and go up, and you could make it a little bit higher. It looks kind of funky, so you might play with it a little bit and say, okay, what's going to make this look so that the crossbar is right, or that where it crosses is right in the middle. The letter Y is a very wide V with a short vertical stem. And with the letter Z, I like to play with it and kind of not put it directly in the square, though you could easily just draw it like this, but we don't write the letter E very often. So sometimes I like to make it look a little jaunty because I'm trying to get that up and to the right feel. And now let's blend this straight lines with some curved lines. And we'll start out with the simple letter, the letter D. So you've got that straight stem. And then you've got almost what looks like a half of an oval, maybe a little bit more. And then the letter B, I like to make the top part a little bit smaller and the bottom part bigger. And sometimes I don't always reach that bottom part. Sometimes to make it a little bit bigger, I have to go below it just a tad. And again, you're going to see those ovals show up. The letter P is similar, but think about the F. We're going to make it come down at about the middle part. You don't want to get too low or the viewer might confuse it to the letter D, but there's your letter P. And then the letter R is like the letter P, though it can be a little bit higher because it has to have that leg, and that leg can just kind of stick out a little bit. It doesn't have to go all the way to the bottom. And then think about that letter K, same way. That leg of that K can just kind of stick out, doesn't have to go all the way down, because what we're looking for are these up and to the right feeling. Once you get that muscle memory in your hand, it's going to be a lot easier to do this faster. Okay, so there's your K. And now let's go to the oval shaped letters. So the letter O is an oval. I don't care if you start at say the 1 o'clock position, if you're thinking about a clock, or over here in the middle. You just want to make sure that you get a nice oval. Maybe you can't tell where it started and where it ends. You can write another one for the letter Q. And to put the stem down, you're going to go down and to the right, and that just helps balance it out a little bit. A letter C looks like an O, only part of it is missing. And again, we want that bottom part to be pretty high because we want that up and to the right feeling. And a very stylized G will look very similar, and then they'll have a straight stem coming down. So while this isn't as readable as, say, this letter G, which I tend to write more frequently, it is more stylized and goes along with the attributes of that straight stem. So it's completely up to you. Once it gets in the word, once that G lives in relationship to other letters, you'll be able to know what it is. And then a few more letters, which are kind of strange, don't look like any other letters in this lettering alphabet, is the U, the J, and the S. So the U, you're going to start straight, and then you're going to find that oval there. And you have two different ways you can finish it. You can either, like the H, go a little higher on that straight stem, or you can make it look like a lowercase. It's completely up to you. And the J kind of looks like the U, only we're going to start lower and come up. This almost looks like a Nike swoosh sign. And then bring that stem down. We're following those attributes, straight lines and curved lines, thinking about that oval. And then the S, remember we want the S to fit in an oval. And so you might draw either with another color marker or with a pencil, a couple of ovals and experiment what that S might look like inside of there. It's got to fit in there. It needs to go up and to the right. It needs to be full of ovals. I like to play with where is the counter space? Is it bigger at the bottom, bigger at the top, or is it equal distance? Now that you've had some time to slowly study the form of how to write like an architect, then what I'd like to do is take you through a guided visualization. And I'm just going to invite you to either close your eyes or rest your eyes on a spot in front of you. If you do rest your eyes on one of the letters that you wrote, maybe just one letter, don't try to practice them or anything like that. And with your feet flat on the ground, if you can, maybe your hands either on your thighs or in front of you. Just gonna stop sharing my screen for a second. Oops. All right. And take a deep breath in and notice how the warmth or the coolness of the air coming in through your nose feels differently when you exhale, whether it's out of your mouth or your nose, it's warmer coming out. And when you breathe in, practice by starting out by breathing in the count of 3 and exhaling on the count of 5. Breathe in, 2, 3, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5. By doing this, you're exhaling more air than you're inhaling, and it slows down the heart rate, your heartbeat, slows everything down, helps you relax faster. It's a great way to go to sleep at night, but don't fall asleep now. Just do it a few times and then stop counting, stop focusing on your numbers. Just take a couple of deep breaths. And notice there comes a moment in time where everything slows down. You can feel the weight and the texture of your paper in front of you just by looking at it, or you can hold it, imagine it if you need. And I want to take you through this visualization. So I want you to imagine holding a brush. It could be a brush marker, it can be an actual brush, it could be a brush pen. And while you pick up the brush, you'll notice the stillness in the ink that rests in the bottle or in the pen. You can feel the force as you break the surface tension with the tip of the brush. The bristles break away from one another and you create a wave. The ink ripples out to the edge of the sides of the bottle and then back again. And as you lift up the brush, gravity and adhesion work together to form a drop that you leave behind in the air as you move over to the paper. There's a wet, sloppy crash as the tip and the side of the brush slop into the surface. And as you drag the brush across the page, the ink disperses in every direction and the friction increases from a glide to a pull as you leave a trail of ink. And you come to a full stop and assess your mark. You have broken the previous relationship you had with the clean white page, and confidence instills. Then you move to make another mark. So what I'd like you to do is take another deep breath. This time, don't worry about counting, just take a breath and release. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes You can move your feet around, your arms around, maybe stretch a little bit. Notice how you feel in your body. And now pick up another mark making tool. It can be a brush. It can just be anything that's different, maybe not a monoline. And if you have a fresh piece of paper, great, grab that. And notice how this tool feels differently in your hand. Maybe make a few practice marks on the page. Notice what comes out of the marker and what does it feel like when you have confident starts and stops, meaning you make contact with the page, you make your mark, you see what your trajectory should be, and then you stop. And can you focus on the letters that you made before with this new tool and notice what it feels like? Notice when you make a mark, if it didn't turn out the way you thought it should, do you have to adjust? Do you have to change the angle of your hand? Do you need to change the pressure? Do you need to refer back to what you wrote earlier to make sure that you are replicating the form again? Do you notice the sound that it makes? And is it different than the other tool? Maybe even go back to the other tool and notice, how is that different? How does it feel different? How does it look different? Staying in the flow state, meaning don't come off mute just yet. Go ahead and draw or write the letters again with this new tool. Notice that immediate feedback that it gives you. Notice what it feels like if you go slowly as opposed to going quickly. How does that affect your line? How does that affect how it feels? And now finish up whatever letter you're writing right now. And think of something you need to do after this call. Think of something you need to do tomorrow or a big project this week. Do you have a parental responsibility? Do you have a financial obligation? Notice what went away from this exercise and what just came up from you. If it's immediate, I'd like you to maybe jot down that sensation. This should be pulling you out of the flow state. And if it doesn't, then here's something else that helps. Technology can pull us out of the flow state faster than anything I've ever seen. When I was in my artist residency, I'm booking along, I'm feeling great, my work is looking good, and then all of a sudden, ding, an email comes in, and I have this reaction to answer it. It just pulled me completely out. So if you feel like you want to get into the flow state, but you're kind of afraid to because you're not sure when you're going to come out of it, set a timer. And that's how Mihai Csikszentmihalyi did it. When he had his, when he put together a beta test group, what he did is he gave people pagers that would go off at random times, and he would have them keep a journal. And in that journal, there were, I think, 7 questions. Now, I came up with my own custom questions based on his because I wanted some different outcomes. And what I did is I set these random timers up. And there's even some apps out there that will help you do this. And when the timer goes off, you actually stop what you're doing and you write down what you're doing, where you are, if you're with someone or not. Are you enjoying yourself? Have you made progress? And it assesses all of that. Then you ask yourself, how do you feel? What are your emotions like? What does it feel like? And it was really helpful. When I did this back in my first artist residency, I told myself, I'm going to do this for 3 weeks. At the same time that I was having these timers go off and journaling, I was wearing this spire. I don't know if any of you have heard of this. It looks like a little rock. If you're a man, I think you put it on your pants. If you're a woman, you can put it on your bra, either the front or the side. And what it does is it takes quantitative data on your mood, your breathing. Are you stressed? Are you focused? Or are you relaxed? And so I said, okay, I'm going to do this work. I'm going to have all this quantitative data plus all of the journaling that I'm doing. That's the qualitative data. And in 3 weeks, I'm going to pull it together, and I'm just going to compare the two. Well, if you're anything like me and I can't wait till my birthday to open my birthday present, I went about 3 days and I started looking at the data, and I couldn't believe how quickly I could get into the flow state and what I was receiving from this little spire, this little thing that was noticing my breathing, that every time I got into the flow state, I went from either calm or stressed to focused. And it was the same every single time. It was usually maybe a few minutes off because I was writing down when I would start a project and then when I would end. And so just know that you can start journaling about this, and having that timer taking you out of it is the best way to track your data. If you wait till the end of the day, you're going to forget how you felt in that moment. So there's a lot of other exercises like this that you can do, and I'll be sharing more of those next year. But I just want to get a sense from everyone. I know that was a really long time where we focused on form. I took you through that quick guided visualization, and then you started using a different tool. What was that like? What came up for you? Feel free to unmute or put that in the chat. Are you still looking down at your paper, longing to want to write more? I love it. You weren't thinking as hard about form when you used the new tool. That's right. You gained a little bit more muscle memory. Great. Good to hear that you were relaxed. Who else? What's your emotion like now? What do you feel like? Yeah. And I'm sorry I only gave you a few minutes to try that. You could probably keep going all night and then lose focus on the timing. Yeah, this is this is good feedback. And it's good feedback, not so much for me, but for yourself. And I'm curious if you'll try this again. And if you do, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to know how that goes for you. But being able to journal about it, I think, is key to show that progress if you're interested in it. If you don't want to journal about it and you just want to try that exercise and do that over and over, we spent about, I want to say about 18 to 20 minutes. We went really slow on the form. That's really slow. Actually, we might not even spent that long, maybe 15 minutes. We spent really a long time getting this form. And then I lessened the time in less than half for the second tool. But that second time, I'm guessing, felt very different than the first time. It took you some time to get into that. Yeah, great. So I think it was Lauren was asking the key questions for journaling. And so again, it's what are you doing? So write that down, be really specific. If you're interested in journaling, you don't have to. Write down what it is you're doing. You might notice the environment you're in. Where are you? If you're just like, I'm in my studio or my office, or I'm outside, and maybe even write something descriptive like, if you're outside, you can hear birds chirping, or you can hear the river, or you can feel the wind, or the temperature. How does it feel in your skin? If you're in your office, can you hear other people in your house? Is somebody making dinner? Can you smell something? Is the window open? Things like that. What's going on in your environment? What's the light like? Sometimes we get so super focused, we forget about that environment around us. And so by writing in your journal will help take you out of that space. And then write down, what were you doing? And really, like, what were you focused on when the ringer came up? Like when that buzzer came up, did it pull you out, and what were you thinking about? And maybe even write down some of your next thoughts. Like, I want to pick up where I left off, but right now I've got a journal about this. And then, are you with someone? What's that like? Are they happy? Are you happy? And really write down, how are you feeling? Are you feeling satisfied? Are you frustrated? Are you not getting where you need to go? And again, that goes back to that skill and challenge level. If you pull out of a flow state, but you're feeling a little bit more frustrated than you're feeling satisfied, then chances are you were really challenged. Okay. So any questions about that, or anybody want to just talk a little bit about what that was like? I can see some great stuff in the chat.
Heather, I'll put a voice behind my question about the questions.
Yeah.
That I just love the idea of the timer. When you were going through the challenge and skill diagram, I wrote this little lightning bolt that went from flow to anxiety when you get interrupted. And so I really appreciate just sharing at the end, talking about technology and the grip that it can have. And so permission to silence technology to get into flow is something I desperately needed.
Yeah.
And the timer will really help.
It can be. And I would only set the timer if you know that you have a responsibility for later, so that you can relax and get into the flow state, right? So you're trusting that your timer will go off when you need to go do something else. Or if you're interested in tracking the process, if you're interested in really understanding what it takes to get into the flow state. So thank you for asking those questions and for noticing that. I will say that when I was in that first artist residency, if any of you know me or follow me on social media, up until a few weeks ago, I post a lot of stuff. I share what I'm creating in the moment, because I practice this theory that I call creating at the speed of imagination. And so I do that. I'm not thinking, what am I going to post tomorrow? I better make something. It's like, here, I'm working on something. I take a picture. And so when I was in that artist residency, I thought, oh, this is going to be a great time to share a lot of content. And I was finding that when I had my camera going, especially if I was videoing and something happened and I had technology on, it would always fail my flow state. It would always interrupt me and take me out of it. And so it took me a couple of days to finally get over, just put the phone away, put the camera away, put all this stuff away, and just create. And I found that as soon as I did, my flow states lasted longer and I was a much happier person. Now, I wasn't posting as much on social media, but I do that at the end of the day, just like like you would normally just journal or whatever at the end of the day. So I still kind of checked that box, but it really helped me stay in that flow state. Now, there was a point in which my husband, many of you know, Ray, he left to go visit his family while we were at the first artist residency. And so I had about a week by myself. And there were other people that were there, but I told everyone, I really want to see how long I can stay in the flow state. So if I can have everyone's support here, I'd like to just go into flow. And if nobody can bug me about there's food or I've got a phone call or something's going on, just leave me alone. I was successful in being in the flow state for 2.5 days. It was incredible. And then finally, it snowed a whole bunch and we ran out of food and we had to dig ourselves out and go find food. So that's what stopped my flow state. It's like, oh, we're going to run out of food here. Oh, and by the way, it snowed a foot. So now we have to shovel all the snow. But I was able to do that in a very long I think 2.5 days is a very long time. But it meant that I couldn't really react or couldn't talk to anyone. I wasn't checking email. I wasn't doing anything. I was just trying to go from project to project, staying focused and having those goals. Yeah, so it is possible. I will say that as soon as we got done shoveling the snow, which was a really great grounding experience, and going back to that, what are some other ways if you get way out there? If you're a meat eater, eat meat. If you can have sugar, eat sugar. Those will ground you, put you in your body. Your body is trying to process all of that. Drink coffee, whatever. That'll get you back into your body if you feel like you're too far out. All right. And so why is it important to get into the flow state? Well, I think many of you had already touched on what it felt like, what the experience was like, but also think about the benefits of productivity. Whenever I can't get into the flow state, I put on a timer for 45 minutes and I make myself do something for 45 minutes. Just keep at it, because I know after 45 minutes, I will have felt like I produced something. And sometimes I'll forget that I set the timer and I get into the flow state. Oh, that timer reminds me 45 minutes is up. And it's a great way to assess. But really getting into the flow state helps with productivity. You've already felt some of the satisfaction and you can realize some of those ideas that you've had. And so what I have here is this is a quickly drawn triangle. This is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I apologize, I should have put that on the slide. Yeah, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so the idea is getting to that self-actualization. And if you are in a place where you feel safe and your psychological needs are met, you have a feeling of, when I say love and belonging, sure, maybe you don't have someone there to make you feel that way, but you're like, I feel like I'm in a safe space. I feel like I'm in a good place. I feel like my esteem is high, meaning that balance between challenge and skill level is good. Then you can experience that self-actualization. So now I regret a little bit not giving Jill some more time. We've got a little bit of extra time. Actually, this is a great time to just wrap up. And I want to share the mic with Jill. Anybody that has questions for her or for me, would love to answer those now before we take off. Plus, I want to make sure everybody's in a good place. So I'll want you to unmute at some point. Just give me a thumbs up. Are you good? Are you still conscious? Yep. Awesome. I love it. So any questions for Jill about strengths and some of the tools that she uses? And Jill, any guidance from you?
Oh my gosh. Stop me now. No, I was going to say two quick things. One is I have new boards up for each of the exercises where you can post any pictures that you've taken, or you can send them to me, and I'm happy to do that. And then I'm happy to post within the comments, even afterwards. I think that'll work. A PDF of all of the frames within Miro. So there's that. And there's so much to talk about flow state, just as you have, Heather, and being in a space where you're actively using your strengths and feeling good about them. There is so much material out there. And one of the practices that's commonly done is a gratitude practice where people are like, oh, I'll write three things down, 3 good things that happened today. But it's really more than that. It's not just thinking about what am I grateful for? And that can be anything from a wonderful warm cup of coffee early in the morning to something huge that happens within your life or in someone's life that you care about. But also, why is it happening? And how did it come about? So it's really thinking about it, and it's also savoring it. And so the Authentic Happiness book has lots of exercises in it that I can't recommend highly enough. And so strengths-based coaching, I think, is a wonderful thing. And reading about that will give you lots of exercises.
Awesome. All right. Plus, we want to announce that we're having a longer workshop that's going to be coming in January. So if you like this, a little bit more time, remind us, Jill, it's January 21st and 22nd?
I believe it is.
Yeah, we just decided this today.
I know. It's on the calendar. I'll check.
That's right. So if it's okay, Mateo, we might put that in Nova Scribes on this, we'll keep posting things up there on this particular
Absolutely.
event. Cool. Let you know when that's coming. We can do more. Yeah. Happy birthday, Lauren. Gift yourself. All right. Any other questions for us? Yeah, I'm going to share this chat. That was juicy. That was juicy good. And again, you can find us on Nova Scribes, so feel free to message us. Jill, do we want to share our emails in the chat?
Sure.
You do that? Yep. Yeah.
Trying to
And-
spell. I don't know. I'm sort of losing that capacity right now.
Yeah, it's switching the brain. That I don't want to say switching from right to left, because I don't know if that's actually true, but it definitely is different, isn't it? Typing letters in a certain order. Good. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I think this was a lot of fun. I loved learning about myself and everybody else in the breakouts and everything. Thank you, Mateo, for having us. Do you have any last announcements for Nova Scribes? You have an upcoming thing on the 10th, right?
We do. Thanks so much, Heather and Jill, for hosting an amazing session tonight, and for all of you that have signed up and joined us this evening, and for all your participation.